He put his baby in my daughter's room, I said. The living room fell silent. Mireya was sitting in the dusty rose nursery glider I had custom ordered with my mother's last birthday card still tucked in my wallet. She was holding her son against her chest as if the room had always belonged to her. My husband stood beside her, one hand resting on the crib I had assembled for Calliope, telling me in front of his mother, his sister, and two relatives I barely knew that I was being selfish for making a baby feel unwelcome. I didn't scream. That seemed to disappoint them. Theron's mother Vesper crossed her arms and glared at the sleeping infant I held in my arms. "Ilara, don't make this ugly. You're overly sensitive right now. You just had a baby." So did Mireya. "And Julian needs a safe place tonight." "Tonight?" I asked. Theron's jaw tightened. Behind him, Mireya lowered her eyes in a way that might have looked humble had she not been sitting beneath the custom wooden name decal for Calliope, which someone had halfway peeled off the wall. The letters hung crookedly. C-A-L-L-I were still there. The last letters had been ripped off and stuck to a garbage bag near the changing table. My daughter's first blanket lay in a cardboard box in the hallway. Her diapers had been tossed next to a pair of Mireya's shoes. The framed sonogram I had placed on the shelf was face down on the floor. Theron looked at me as if I were the intruder. "This is my house too," he said. "You don't get to dictate everything just because you decorated a room." I looked up at the corner of the ceiling above the white bookshelf. The nanny cam was still there. Theron had forgotten I installed it after bringing Calliope home from the hospital. He had laughed at me then, calling me paranoid. Now, the tiny black lens had watched him carry my daughter's things out of the room I had prepared for her. It had watched Mireya carry her son in. It had watched Vesper stand in the doorway and say Ilara will adjust. She always does. I pulled Calliope closer to my chest. She stirred, opened her tiny mouth, and settled again. That small movement did more than any insult in the room. It severed the final thread I had been clinging to. Theron mistook my silence for surrender. "Go upstairs," he said, dropping his voice as if he were being generous. "Put Calliope in our room for now. We'll talk when you've calmed down." I looked at the crib, then at Mireya, and finally at the man who had once kissed my pregnant belly and promised our daughter would have the safest room in the world. "I am calm," I said. Vesper scoffed. "Then act like it." And so? I did. I walked right past them, stepped into the nursery, and pulled Calliope's hospital bracelet out of the cardboard box. I picked up the fallen sonogram frame. I grabbed the small silver key hidden behind the frame on the shelf, the key to the fireproof safe in my closet. Theron frowned. "What are you doing?" "Taking what belongs to my daughter," I said. He let out a short laugh. "Ilara, don't be dramatic." I didn't answer. I carried Calliope down the hall to the master bedroom. I opened the safe and took out 3 things. Our vital records folder containing the birth certificates and social security cards, the prenuptial agreement and the property deed to the colonial house in Scarsdale that Theron had just called his. By the time he followed me upstairs, I had already shoved the documents into the diaper bag. "Where do you think you're going?" he demanded. I looked at the man who had moved another woman's baby into my daughter's room, thinking I would fight for a corner in my own home. Then I disabled our location sharing on my phone. "I'm leaving before you make the mistake of thinking you kicked me out." I had imagined bringing Calliope home 100 times before actually doing it. In every version, Theron was waiting for me at the door. He'd take the car seat from my tired arms. He'd kiss my forehead and whisper that our daughter was perfect. His mother would cry. Someone would take too many pictures. The nursery light would be on, not the harsh overhead light, but the small moon-shaped lamp near the window. The one I chose because it made the whole room glow softly like a promise. I had washed every onesie twice. I had color-coordinated the blankets in the bottom drawer. I had placed the first stuffed bunny my mother bought before she passed away on the shelf right where Calliope could see it when she got older. That room was the only place in my marriage where I hadn't compromised. Theron liked beige minimalism. His mother liked practicality. I liked warmth, softness, and proof that my daughter had been wanted before she took her first breath. When the garage door opened that afternoon, I was exhausted from a pediatrician's checkup, still sore from labor wearing the same oversized cardigan I had slept in. Calliope was asleep against my chest in her wrap smelling of milk and baby shampoo. I walked into the house and noticed the first thing out of place before I even dropped my bag. There were unfamiliar shoes in the foyer, women's shoes. Pale blue ballet flats, small and clean, placed neatly next to Theron's sneakers. I stared at them. Then I heard a baby crying upstairs. It wasn't Calliope. I already knew my daughter's cry. Hers was thin and breathy at first, as if she wasn't sure the world deserved her effort. This cry was sharper, older, hungry. My hand tightened around the strap of the diaper bag. I called out for Theron. No answer. The house smelled of lavender detergent and someone else's perfume. I walked toward the stairs. Every step made my recovering body pull with pain. But something cold had started moving through me, stronger than the pain. At the top of the stairs, I saw the boxes. 3 cardboard boxes in the hallway right outside the nursery door. My stomach dropped, before my mind even comprehended what I was seeing. Calliope's white swaddles were in the first box, unfolded and wrinkled. The pale yellow cardigan my mother had knitted before she died was hanging off the edge like garbage. The second box held diapers, wipes, bottles, burp cloths, and 2 framed photos from the hospital. The third held books, tiny socks, and the wooden name sign I had custom ordered from an artisan in Vermont. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Then the nursery door opened. Maria walked out. I had seen her exactly once before, 8 months pregnant, standing entirely too close to Theron outside his Midtown Manhattan office building. He had told me she was a former associate going through a rough patch. He told me I was insecure for noticing how she touched his arm. Now she was in my hallway wearing my husband's gray t-shirt, holding a baby against her shoulder. "Oh," she said. Not surprised, not ashamed, just soft, careful, as if she had practiced being caught. Her baby turned his head and rooted against her chest. He looked about 4 months old. His dark hair was damp with sleep. My eyes moved past them into the room I had painted with my own hands while Theron took work calls downstairs. The room where I had sat on the floor 7 months pregnant, folding tiny clothes and crying because my mother would never meet her granddaughter. It wasn't Calliope's room anymore. The crib sheets had been changed. The white fitted sheet with gold stars was gone, replaced by a blue one I had never seen. A massive diaper bag rested on the changing table. A pile of Julian's clothes filled the chair. Calliope's bunny was gone from the shelf. The moon lamp was still there, but the vinyl name decal above it had been mutilated. Maria followed my gaze and smiled apologetically. "I'm sorry for the mess," she said. "Theron said we could get settled before you got back." Settled. The word pierced my chest like glass. I looked down at Calliope. She was still asleep, warm and oblivious. I had spent weeks imagining her first moment in that room. Instead, she had been evicted before she even arrived. "Theron," I said. This time my voice echoed. He appeared at the top of the stairs, phone in hand. His face shifted when he saw me, not with guilt, but annoyance. "You're back early," he said. Early. The appointment was supposed to take longer. I stared at him. My husband. The man who had skipped 3 prenatal ultrasounds and then posted a photo of himself assembling Calliope's crib on Instagram like he was father of the year. He took a step toward Maria first. Not me. Not Calliope. "Is Julian okay?" he asked softly. He waited until he checked on her baby, before his eyes flicked down to the sleeping bundle against my chest, then back to my face. "Alara, before you react, just listen." That was when I knew this wasn't an emergency. This was planned. "Why are Calliope's things in the hallway?" I asked. Theron sighed. I knew that sigh. It was the one he used to make me feel childish before he even spoke. "Maria needed the room," he said. "Julian has been sleeping poorly. She doesn't have a stable living situation right now." I turned my head slowly and looked at Maria. She lowered her gaze. "I didn't want to cause any trouble," she murmured, standing in my daughter's nursery, wearing my husband's shirt. The sentence almost made me laugh. Vesper's voice drifted up from downstairs. "Is she home?" A moment later, my mother-in-law climbed the stairs holding a dish towel, looking as if she had been hosting a family dinner rather than watching another woman move into my house. She looked at my face, then the boxes. "Alara!" she said sharply. "Don't start." I stared at her. She climbed the last step and lowered her voice. "You just had a baby. Your hormones are all over the place. This is not the time for drama." "This is my daughter's room." "It's a room," Vesper said. "A baby doesn't know the difference." Theron rubbed his forehead. "That's exactly the problem. You're making this about you." My fingers went numb around Calliope's blanket. "Who moved her things?" Nobody answered. That was an answer. I looked at Theron. "It was you." His jaw worked. "Alara, I did what had to be done." What had to be done. The phrase settled between us. "A month ago, I needed help getting out of bed after delivery, and he complained it made him late for a client dinner. 2 weeks ago, Calliope had cried from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m., and he went to the guest room because he had a morning meeting. 3 days ago, I asked him to pick up diapers and he forgot, but moving another woman into my daughter's room that had to be done. Maria rocked Julian gently. "Maybe I should go downstairs." "No," Theron said quickly. Too quickly. Vesper glared at me. "Maria is not the enemy here." I almost smiled. That was the thing about people who had already picked sides. They always wanted the injured party to be the first to act reasonable. Theron took another step. Maria's lease ended. She had postpartum complications. She needs support. Julian needs a routine. We have the space. We, I asked. He ignored the word. You and Calliope can stay in our room for now. For now, yes. And Maria stays in the nursery until we figure things out. I looked past him to the crib. Julian had started fussing again. Maria carried him back inside as if my silence was permission. She sat in my glider, the one I had saved up for months to buy, and started patting his back. That was the first public humiliation of my new life as a mother. Not a ballroom, not a party, not a crowd, a hallway, 3 cardboard boxes. A mistress sitting in my chair with her baby in my daughter's room while my husband's family watched to see if I would break. Vesper crossed her arms. Alara, you need to be mature. My laugh came out quiet. Mature. Yes, there are children involved. My daughter is involved. And so is Julian. Theron snapped. The silence after that was different. Even Vesper looked at him. Theron had defended Maria's baby before acknowledging he had just displaced his own daughter. Maria's eyes flickered toward me. There was something in them then. Not guilt. Victory. I saw it. And because I saw it, I stopped begging the part of me that wanted to ask why. Why would he do this? Why now? Why her? Why in our daughter's room? Those questions belonged to a woman who still hoped the answer could make the pain smaller. I wasn't that woman anymore. I hiked Calliope a little higher on my chest and looked around the nursery door frame, the white bookshelf, the moon lamp, the small black dot near the ceiling corner. The nanny cam was still on. Still recording. I had installed it myself, synced it to my phone, and set up a cloud backup after reading too many safety articles during my pregnancy. Theron had mocked me. Do you think someone's going to steal a pacifier? He had said. No, but someone had stolen a room. The first thing I did after leaving my own house wasn't calling my father. I didn't have one worth calling. I didn't call a friend to cry, even though my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my car keys. I put Calliope in her car seat. That was the first decision, the cleanest one buckle. Pull the strap tight, check the chest clip, tuck the blanket around her legs. My daughter made a tiny sound of irritation and then grew still again. I stood by the open rear door of my SUV and breathed through the ache in my abdomen. Behind me, the Scarsdale Colonial looked exactly as it had that morning. The brick facade, the dark shutters, the hydrangeas by the porch. The welcome mat Vesper had bought without asking because she said mine looked too childish. Then my phone started ringing. Theron. I let it ring. He called again before I even pulled out of the driveway. I declined it. Then the text started. You're overreacting. Come back before you embarrass yourself. My mom is disgusted. Maria is crying now. Are you happy? Think about Calliope. That last one made me laugh so suddenly it hurt. I parked at the end of the street because my vision had gone watery and I refused to drive my daughter anywhere while crying. I wiped my face with the sleeve of my cardigan, then opened the nanny cam app. For a moment, the screen buffered. Then the nursery appeared. Maria was sitting in my glider again. Vesper was by the crib. Theron was pacing near the door. The audio was crystal clear. Let her cool off, Vesper said. She always comes back when she realizes nobody's chasing her. Theron ran a hand through his hair. She took something from the safe. What I don't know. Papers. Maria looked up. What kind of papers? Theron snapped. I said, I don't know. Vesper scoffed. Probably the baby's medical records. She just wants attention. Maria settled Julian on her shoulder. I should get my things out of here. No, Theron said. The speed of that answer told me everything. He repeated it calmer. If you move out now, she wins. Vesper made a sound of approval. Exactly. You can't let a woman dictate your home just because she gave birth. Your home. I looked at the house through the windshield. My mother's inheritance had paid the down payment. My checking account had carried the mortgage when Theron's commissions dried up during the market dip. My name was on the deed. My signature was on the insurance. My bank account had paid for the roof repair, the nursery furniture, and the landscaping Vesper liked to brag about. But in Vesper's mouth, it was Theron's home. In Theron's mind, it had become Maria's refuge. In Miria's eyes, it was a prize she could inhabit if she cried softly enough. I hit record on the app even though the video was already saving to the cloud. I wanted a separate copy. Theron's voice drifted through again. She won't stay away, he said. Where is she going to go with a newborn? I looked at Calliope in the rearview mirror. Somewhere better, I whispered. Then I put the car in drive. I didn't go to a hotel first. I drove to a quiet office building in Midtown Manhattan with smoked glass doors and a security desk that always smelled faintly of coffee. The brass plaque read Sloan Sterling Family and Estate Law. Sloan Sterling had been my mother's attorney before becoming mine. She had executed the estate after Mom died. She had drafted the prenuptial agreement that Theron hated. She had looked me in the eye 2 weeks before my wedding and said, "Ilara, protection isn't pessimism. It's respect for the woman who raised you." At the time, I smiled politely and thought she was too cynical. Now I understood she had simply seen more marriages than I had. Her receptionist looked up as I walked in carrying Calliope's car seat and a diaper bag stuffed with legal documents. His smile faded. "I need Sloan," I said. "If she has 10 minutes. He stood up immediately. "Let me check." 3 minutes later, Sloan herself opened her office door. She was in her 50s with silver-streaked black hair cut sharply at the jaw and eyes that missed nothing. She looked at my face, then at the baby seat. "Come in." I sat on the leather sofa because my knees no longer trusted me. Sloan closed the door, dimmed the lights near Calliope, and waited until I placed the folders on her coffee table. "Theron moved his mistress and her baby into my daughter's nursery," I said. Sloan's expression barely changed. Only her eyes sharpened. "Start from the beginning." And so I did. I told her about Maria, the shoes, the boxes, the baby in Calliope's crib, Vesper Theron, saying the house was his, the documents, the camera. When I mentioned the camera, Sloan held up a finger. "You have the footage, yes, backed up to the cloud. Do not send it to anyone yet. Download local copies. Keep one somewhere Theron cannot access. Do not edit anything. I won't." "Good." She opened the property deed first. I watched her read the names, though I knew what she would see. Owner, Ilara Marie Carter. Sole ownership, not Theron. Sloan checked the prenup next. Her mouth pressed into a thin line at the relevant clause. Premarital assets remain separate. Appreciation tied to premarital contributions remains separate unless jointly refinanced or retitled by written agreement. She looked up. "There is no such agreement. You never added Theron to the deed. You didn't refinance in his name." "No." She nodded. "Then he has zero ownership rights to the house based on what I see here. He can argue marital contributions to the mortgage payments, but that is at most an issue of financial reimbursement. It does not give him the right to house another adult there against your consent." The room tilted slightly, not from shock, but from a relief so sudden it felt dangerous. "He said it was his house too," I whispered. Sloan looked at me. People say a lot of things when they're standing in houses they don't own. For the first time that day, I almost smiled. She pulled a legal pad toward her. "Does Maria receive mail at your address?" "I don't know. She just moved in." "How long has she been there?" "You walked in on her today, but based on the boxes, maybe earlier." "I stayed at my sister's apartment for 2 nights after Calliope's checkup because I was too tired to drive back, and Theron said he had late meetings." Sloan's pen paused. "Did he encourage you to stay away?" I searched my memory. Theron had texted me, "Stay at Fallon's if it's easier. Contractors are coming to look at the HVAC house, will be loud." Contractors. There were no contractors. My throat tightened. "Yes." Sloan wrote that down. "Send me the texts." I did. She reviewed them quickly. "Do you want to return to the house tonight?" I looked at Calliope. She yawned in her sleep, her tiny mouth, open face, peaceful. "No," I said. "Not while they're there. I want them out." Sloan nodded. "We can start with a formal cease and desist and a notice to vacate. Since Maria is not a tenant under any lease, is not on the deed, and entered with Theron's permission, but without yours, she's essentially a guest who has overstayed the owner's welcome. The strategy depends on New York occupancy laws. We proceed methodically. I can have a process server deliver a formal notice to vacate today. If Theron refuses, we escalate. We can also document unauthorized occupancy and involve the HOA and, if necessary, file for an emergency order in family court for exclusive possession of the marital residence." "How long will it take? Legally, there are timelines, but pressure can work quickly if they realize you know your rights." She looked at me. "Do you want Theron out too?" The question landed in silence. I had left thinking about Maria. But Theron had moved the boxes. Theron had defended her. Theron had placed his hand on Calliope's crib like a man claiming territory. I looked at my daughter. "Yes," I said. Sloan didn't blink. "Then we prepare for divorce." The word divorce entered the room and didn't explode. It just sat there, solid, heavy, real. My marriage had been dying in small ways for months, maybe longer. Missed doctor's appointments, cold dinners, his phone face down a scent of perfume I didn't wear. A husband who complained that pregnancy made me distant while I threw up in a basin at midnight. But I had kept negotiating with reality. Maybe he was stressed. Maybe I was sensitive. Maybe after Calliope arrived, he would remember who we were supposed to be. Then he gave another woman's baby, the nursery he wouldn't help finish for his own daughter. There are betrayals so specific they become mercies. They leave no room for denial. Sloane pushed a box of tissues toward me. I took one, but I didn't cry. Where can you stay tonight? My sister Fallon's apartment in Brooklyn. She's out of town in London, but I have her keys. Good. Do not go back alone. Do not argue with Theron over the phone. Keep all communication in writing if possible. He will keep calling. Let him. If you answer, you need to know. New York is a one-party consent state for recording, but for now, texts and emails are cleaner. I nodded. Sloane leaned back. Ilara, I need to ask you something difficult. Has he ever physically threatened you? Has he ever blocked you from leaving before today? I hesitated. Her eyes narrowed slightly. He stood in the bedroom doorway, I said. But he moved. Document that. He said I wasn't leaving with his daughter. Document that too. His daughter, not our daughter. The pattern became visible only after Sloane started naming it. Control wasn't always a hand around a wrist. Sometimes it was a man assuming every room, every dollar, every child. Every sacrifice would bend toward him because it always had. I spent the next hour sending Sloane everything. Screenshots, bank transfers, mortgage receipts, hospital discharge papers, Theron's texts, photos of the nursery before Calliope was born, photos of the boxes in the hallway, video clips from the nanny cam. When I opened the app again, the nursery camera showed Mireya alone. She was standing by the wall, peeling the remaining letters of Calliope's name off with her fingernail. She rolled them into a sticky ball and threw them in the trash. Something inside me went very still. Sloane saw my face. What is it? I turned the phone toward her. She watched as Mireya picked up Julian and placed him into Calliope's crib. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Sloane said, Save that. I did. My hands weren't shaking anymore. Theron's first email arrived at 6:42 p.m. The subject line was, Let's be adults. That was how I knew Vesper had helped him write it. Theron didn't use subject lines unless someone told him to. His usual texts were fragments and demands. Get dry cleaning. Where's my blue shirt? Pay the water bill. Don't wait up. This email was different. Ilara, today was painful for everyone. Your reaction created unnecessary stress in a house with 2 infants. I understand you may be experiencing postpartum emotions, but leaving with Calliope and taking documents without discussing it was not appropriate. Mireya and Julian are in a vulnerable situation. I made a temporary decision to help them. You've always said you care about children, so I hope you can reflect on whether your behavior matches the kind of mother you want to be. We should meet tomorrow at 10 a.m. with my mom present to discuss a reasonable arrangement. Theron I read it once then again. A reasonable arrangement. My daughter's room had been gutted. My husband's mistress had been installed in it. And I was being invited to discuss reasonable arrangements under the supervision of my mother-in-law. I forwarded it to Sloane. Her reply came 3 minutes later. Do not attend alone. Ask for a written proposal. Keep the tone neutral. So I replied, Theron, send the specific arrangement you are proposing in writing prior to any meeting. I will not discuss my daughter's living situation with Mireya present. All communication regarding the house and Calliope needs to be in writing. He called immediately. I let it ring. Then came the text. Are you making this legal? Seriously? I replied, yes. The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, appeared again, and then nothing. That night in Fallon's apartment, I slept in 40-minute intervals. Calliope ate, cried, slept, and woke again. My body ached. My mind replayed the boxes in the hallway every time I closed my eyes. At 3:15 a.m. With Calliope sleeping on my chest and Brooklyn humming outside the window, I opened my banking app. The joint household checking account was still tied to the auto-pays Theron had asked me to manage, because I was better at that stuff. Mortgage, electricity, water insurance, his car insurance, Vesper's cell phone bill, a monthly transfer to Vesper labeled help, and a credit card payment Theron had promised was for joint expenses. I clicked through them one by one. The mortgage stayed. The utilities stayed. The home insurance stayed. Vesper's cell phone bill canceled. The monthly transfer canceled. Theron's personal credit card autopay canceled. A warning popped up asking if I was sure. I was. For 4 years, I had confused managing his life with building ours. For 4 years, I had smoothed over late payments, sent birthday gifts to his relatives, remembered his mother's recipes, restocked his favorite coffee, and apologized for being tired when pregnancy made me collapse on the bathroom floor. I had thought love meant filling in gaps. Now I saw what he had learned from it. He had learned that if he hollowed something out, I would refill it. Not anymore. In the morning, Theron sent another email. We need to talk today. Mom is coming over at 11. Mireya will be here because this affects her too. If you refuse to participate, I will have to assume you are abandoning the marital home. I forwarded it to Sloane. She replied with one sentence. Excellent, keep writing confessions. I almost laughed. At 1:05:03 a.m., Theron sent a FaceTime request. I declined it. At 11:08 a.m., Vesper texted me. You are hurting everyone because your pride is wounded. Theron is trying to be kind to a struggling mother. Do not punish an innocent baby. I stared at the word innocent. Julian was innocent. So was Calliope. Only one of them had been shoved out of a room. I didn't reply. At 11:30 a.m., my nanny cam app alerted me to movement in the living room. I opened it on my laptop and watched the family meeting begin without me. Theron had set up a laptop on the coffee table, probably expecting me to join via video. Vesper sat rigidly on the sofa. Theron's sister Saris was there, along with Aunt Rose and Cousin Mark, two people who normally only showed up for holidays and free food. Mireya sat near the armchair with Julian in her lap wearing a pale sweater and an expression engineered for pity. Theron stood in the middle of the room. Alara isn't going to join, he said. Vesper scoffed. Of course not. Saris looked uncomfortable. Maybe we should give her time. No, Vesper said. Time is how she controls people. She disappears and waits for everyone to chase her. I started screen recording. Theron paced. I'm trying to do the right thing. Mireya doesn't have family nearby. Julian needs stability. Alara knows that nursery is the safest room for an infant. Aunt Rose frowned. But it's not Alara's baby's room. Theron's face tightened. It's a room. A room can be shared. Mireya spoke softly. I offered to sleep on the couch. No, she hadn't. But Theron insisted Julian needed a quiet space. She sniffled. I didn't want to cause trouble. Vesper leaned over and patted her hand. The gesture was so maternal, I felt something ugly and cold move inside me. Vesper had visited Calliope once at the hospital. She had complained about the parking and asked when I planned to lose the baby weight because pictures are forever. For Mireya, she had softness. For me, demands. Theron held up his phone. I'm going to call her again. He dialed. My phone vibrated next to the laptop. I declined it. On the screen, his jaw clenched. She's refusing to communicate. I typed an email while watching him. I am available to communicate in writing. Please confirm if you moved Mireya and her child into the property without my consent, and if you removed Calliope's belongings from her nursery. Alara, I hit send. On camera, Theron looked at his phone, read the email, and his face shifted. Vesper leaned toward him. What? He shook his head. She's trying to trap me. Sarah sat up straighter. What? Did she ask legal nonsense? What? Did she ask Theron? Saris repeated. He glared at her. Aunt Rose looked between them. If this is about the room, why don't you just put Alara's baby's things back? Mireya's eyes instantly filled with tears. I don't want to be the reason everyone is fighting. Nobody asked her why she had moved in. That was when I understood another painful truth. In families like Theron's, the person who cries first often wins. I had spent years trying to be reasonable. Mireya had learned faster. She used softness as a weapon, just like Theron used irritation, and Vesper used duty. Theron replied to my email at 12:04 p.m. I allowed Mireya and Julian to stay temporarily because it was necessary. Calliope's things were moved carefully and are still in the house. You're distorting everything. I forwarded it to Sloane. Then I replied, who moved Calliope's things? 20 minutes passed. On the nanny cam, Theron argued with Vesper in the kitchen. She wants me to say I did it. Vesper whispered, don't, she'll twist it. Saris's voice came from the doorway. You did do it. Silence. Then Theron said, it's my house too. I can move furniture. There it was. Clear. Useful. Damning. Saris said Theron, he snapped. Don't start with me. I saved the clip. By the afternoon, Sloane had drafted the formal cease and desist and notice to vacate. It wasn't dramatic. Legal documents rarely are. That was their power. They didn't sob. They didn't beg. They didn't ask a cheating husband to remember his vows. They stated facts. Mireya had no lease, no ownership rights. No written permission from the property owner, and no legal standing to remain if consent was withdrawn. Theron Carter was on notice that inviting an unauthorized occupant into a separate property without the owner's consent did not magically create tenancy rights. All personal belongings not belonging to the owner or her minor child were to be removed. Any further interference with the owner's access or property would be documented. Sloan read the final paragraph aloud over the phone. If they refuse, we proceed with an emergency eviction action in court and request temporary exclusive use of the home. I will coordinate with a process server and the HOA. Can it be fast? I asked. We will make it happen by the book, she said. Doing it by the book is what keeps it from falling apart later. I looked over at Calliope, sleeping in the portable bassinet Fallon kept for visiting friends with babies. By the book. That phrase became my anchor. Not loudly, not emotionally, methodically. At 4:17 p.m., Theron emailed again. Fine, I moved some stuff. I didn't throw anything away. You're acting like I hurt Calliope. She's a newborn. She doesn't need a decorated room. Mariah's baby is older and actually uses it. I read the line 3 times. She's a newborn. She doesn't need a decorated room. He thought a room only mattered if a baby could remember it. He didn't understand that the nursery had never just been walls and furniture. It was proof that before Calliope could speak, someone had made space for her. Theron had taken that space because he believed my daughter was too small to notice and I was too weak to stop him. I saved the email. Then I opened a new folder on my cloud drive. I named it Carter vs. Carter, Custody and Residence. Inside, I dropped every document. The deed, the prenup, the emails, the texts, the nanny cam clips, the photos of the boxes, the video of Mariah peeling Calliope's name off the wall, the clip of Theron saying, "It's my house too." The clip of Vesper saying, "She always comes back." By midnight, the folder had 37 files. By morning, it would have more. Sloane's office became the first place where no one asked me to calm down. That mattered more than I expected. Everywhere else, calmness had been a leash. Theron told me to calm down when he wanted me quiet. Vesper told me to calm down when she wanted me ashamed. Miria used calmness, like a mirror, making herself small so I would look cruel if I took up any space. Sloane never told me to calm down. She told me to document. She told me to eat. She told me to sleep if Calliope slept for more than 20 minutes. She told me to stop apologizing every time I handed her another piece of evidence. On the second day after leaving, I sat across from her in the conference room while Calliope slept in her stroller beside me. Sunlight spilled across the table, hitting the neat stacks of printed emails. Sloane tapped a page. This text is important. It was Theron's email claiming Calliope didn't need a decorated room. Why, I asked. It shows his mindset regarding Calliope's needs and his willingness to displace her for another child. In custody matters, New York courts don't necessarily punish infidelity on its own, but they care deeply about judgment, stability, and whether a parent creates emotional or physical upheaval for a child. She is a newborn. Yes, I said. And newborns need stability too. They need a safe sleep environment. They need a primary caregiver who is not thrust into chaos days after giving birth. I looked down at my hands. My nails were chipped. There was a thin scratch near my wrist from carrying too many bags at once. I should have seen it sooner. Sloane's voice softened just a fraction. Seeing that, he didn't care. I didn't answer immediately. Outside the glass wall, her paralegal walked by, carrying a file. Normal life was continuing. Phones buzzed. Printers hummed. Someone laughed down the hall. Inside me, something very old was collapsing. Theron hadn't become selfish in one day. The nursery made it undeniable, but the pattern had been there. The first year of marriage, he called my job cute because designing children's spaces didn't impress his friends in corporate real estate. The second year, he started asking me to handle his mother's errands because I had a flexible schedule. The third year, when we started trying for a baby and I had 2 miscarriages, he cried the first time, hugged me the second time, and avoided the house the third time. By the time Calliope survived inside me, I had become grateful for crumbs. A hand on my back during an ultrasound, a half-assembled crib, a caption under an Instagram photo. My girls. He liked the image of us. He hadn't cared about the reality. I kept thinking if I needed less, he would love me more, I said. Sloane looked at me over her glasses. And needing less just made him take more. The answer sat between us. I taught him how to take from me. Calliope made a small sound in the stroller. I reached down and touched her blanket. I don't want her to learn this from me. Then she won't, Sloane said. That afternoon, we built the timeline. Sloane wanted exact dates. When did Maria leave Theron's firm? When did Theron start staying late? When did he suggest I stay at Fallon's apartment? When did the supposed contractors come? When did the camera record movement? I had always thought betrayal would feel foggy. It didn't. Once I started documenting, it became terrifyingly clear. 3 weeks before Calliope's birth, Theron texted Maria at 1:12 a.m. Soon. Just need to figure some things out at the house. 2 weeks before. Maria sent him a photo of Julian asleep in a car seat with the text, "He deserves better than this." Theron replied, "I know. I'll fix it." The chat history came later through Maria, but I didn't know that yet. At the time, I only had my own texts with Theron. 8 days before Calliope's birth, Theron asked me where the spare crib sheets were kept. I had been touched. I thought he wanted to help. 4 days after Calliope came home, he suggested I stay at Fallon's because contractors were coming. The monitor showed no contractors. It showed Theron moving Calliope's boxes out at 9:43 p.m. It showed Maria arriving with Julian at 10:18 p.m. It showed Vesper walking in at 10:41 p.m. with 2 grocery bags. It showed all 3 of them standing in the nursery, while Theron pointed at the crib and said something the camera didn't quite catch, because Maria was crying over it. Sloan sent the audio file to a tech specialist to clean it up. "Do we need that?" I asked. "We might not," Sloan said. "But evidence is like insurance. You gather it before you know which piece is the one that saves you." I thought of my mother. She kept everything. Receipts, titles, medical records, birthday cards, warranty manuals for appliances she had replaced years ago. I used to tease her for it. After her death, those folders helped Sloan settle the estate without chaos. Now, my mother's habit lived in me, and it was saving my daughter's house. That night, I went to Fallon's apartment and tried to make it look less temporary. I washed Calliope's bottles. I folded the few clothes I had grabbed. I draped my mother's yellow knitted cardigan over the back of the sofa because it hurt too much to keep it in a bag. Fallon called from London as she landed. "I swear to God," she said, skipping hello. "I am booking a flight back tonight and shaving his eyebrows off while he sleeps." I laughed for the first time in days. It sounded broken. "Please don't commit a felony for me." "I'm not saying I'd get caught." Fallon sighed heavily. "Are you safe?" "Yes. Calliope is safe." I looked at my daughter sleeping in the bassinet by the sofa. "Yes. Okay. Then listen to me. You are not homeless. You are not stranded. You have the keys to my place, my car, if you need it, and every ounce of rage I possess." I closed my eyes. "Thank you. Don't thank me. Tell me what you need." The old Alara would have said, "Nothing. I'm fine." The new one, the one born in the hallway outside a stolen room, said, "Can you stay on the phone while I eat something?" Fallon's voice softened. "Of course." So I heated up soup while my sister talked about airport delays, hotel coffee, and a man at baggage claim who tried to take the wrong suitcase 3 times. It was ordinary. It saved me from drowning. Midway through the soup, my phone buzzed. Theron. Not a call. A photo. He had sent a picture of the nursery. Julian was asleep in Calliope's crib. The text beneath it read, "This is what you're punishing." I stared at the screen. Fallon stopped talking. What happened? He sent a picture of Maria's baby in Calliope's crib. What is wrong with him? I saved the image, then forwarded it to Sloan. I didn't reply. 5 minutes later, Theron sent another text. "You used to be kind. That one hurt. Not because it was true, but because for years he had made being kind mean giving up." I typed a sentence, "I am being kind to my daughter." I hovered over, send, then deleted it. Sloan had said written communication must be strategic. Theron was looking for emotion, something he could show his family and say, "See, I'm the stable one." So I wrote nothing. The next morning, Sloan called. "The process server is delivering the notice today." My heart did a complicated flutter. Today, to Theron at the house, and Maria, if she's there, yes. I have also sent a formal notice to your HOA that an unauthorized occupant may be residing there. They cannot physically remove her for you, but they can document violations if she is not a registered guest. Do you know if your community requires guest registration? Yes. Anyone staying more than 7 days has to be registered. Good. She just moved in. Even better. I looked at Calliope, who was awake, now staring at nothing with the solemn confusion of newborns. What happens after they get it? Will they actually comply? Will they panic or escalate? Prepare for all 3, Sloan said. Theron chose all 3. At 2:06 p.m. He called 8 times. At 2:18 p.m. Vesper called 3 times. at 2:31 p.m. Saris texted, "What is going on, Mom? Says you sent legal papers to the house." I replied, "Theron moved Maria and her baby into Calliope's nursery without my consent. I have asked them to leave my property." Saris didn't reply for 11 minutes. "Your property. Did you not send documents?" "Not yet," I wrote. "Yes. At 3:05 p.m. Theron emailed, "You are insane. You cannot kick my guest out of our family home. You abandoned the house. I have the right to have support here." At 3:08 p.m. Sloan replied on my behalf, "Mr. Carter, please direct all legal communication to my office. Mrs. Carter has not abandoned the property. She departed with her newborn child after you admitted to moving an unauthorized adult and minor into the nursery prepared for said child without Mrs. Carter's consent. The property is titled solely in Mrs. Carter's name. Any claims to the contrary must be provided in writing with supporting documentation. Sloan Sterling." I read the email 3 times. The property is titled solely in Mrs. Carter's name. It felt almost too simple. One sentence against years of his entitlement. At 3:19 p.m. Theron called again. This time, I answered not because I wanted to talk, but because Sloan was sitting next to me with her office phone ready to join if needed, and New York allows one-party recording. Sloan mouthed speaker. I put him on. "Theron," I said. "What the hell is this?" he yelled. Calliope startled in her stroller. My entire body tensed. Sloan held up a finger, reminding me to hold the line. "This call is on speakerphone, and I am documenting it," I said. "If you keep yelling, I will hang up." Silence. Then lower. "You brought a lawyer into our marriage. You brought Maria into our daughter's nursery." He exhaled loudly. "For God's sake, Alara, stop saying it like that. How would you prefer I describe it? You're making it sound ugly." "It is ugly." Sloan wrote something on her legal pad and spun it toward me. "Ask if he is moving Maria out." I read it. "Are Maria and Julian leaving the property today?" "They have nowhere to go." "That doesn't answer the question. It's not that simple." "It is to me." He sighed bitterly. "Since when? Since I found my baby's name in the trash, I thought." But I said nothing. Theron's voice shifted. Softer now. Familiar. Dangerous. "Okay, come on. We can talk about this. You're hurt. I know I handled it badly, but running to lawyers makes everything worse. There was a time that voice could have pulled me out of any abyss. He had apologized without changing before. He had promised without planning. He had made me responsible for forgiving him before he was responsible for stopping." I looked at Calliope. "No," I said. "It makes everything clear." His silence sharpened. "You're going to regret this." "Maybe," I said, "but not as much as I'd regret teaching Calliope that love means being quietly displaced." I ended the call. My hands shook afterward. Sloan slid a glass of water toward me. "That was good," she said. "It didn't feel good. It felt like amputating my own infected hand. Necessary. Horrible. Clean." By early evening, the repaired audio from the nursery camera arrived. Sloan played it once. The clip showed Theron standing by Calliope's crib while Maria cried. Vesper's voice was clear. "Ilara will adjust. She always does." Then Theron said once Maria and Julian are settled. "Ilara won't force me to kick them out," Maria whispered. "What if she hates me?" Theron replied. "She won't leave. Not with Calliope. Not without this house." I listened without blinking. There it was. No confusion, no kindness, no emergency. Calculation. He hadn't thought I would approve. He had thought he could trap me. Sloan paused the video. "Save this in 3 places," she said. I already had. That night, I slept for almost 2 solid hours. In the morning, I woke up to a text from Theron. "Okay, you want to play hardball? Come say it to my face." Below it was a picture of the legal notice ripped in half on the kitchen counter. I forwarded it to Sloan. Then I got up, fed Calliope, washed my face, and put on the black wrap dress I had worn to my mother's estate signing. Not as armor, but as a reminder. Women before me had signed papers so I could stand on my own 2 feet. Now I would. I met Mrs. Gable at a coffee shop in town because she refused to discuss serious matters over the phone. She was 72, widowed, and had lived next door since before Theron and I bought the Colonial. She pruned her hydrangeas with surgical precision, knew every delivery truck by sound, and once told Theron the edging on his lawn looked pitiful while he was standing right in front of her. I had always liked her. Theron had always called her a busybody. That morning, she was sitting near the window with black coffee and an untouched pastry. When I walked in with Calliope's stroller, she stood up carefully and put a hand to her heart. "Oh, honey," she said. 2 words. That was all it took. My eyes burned. I swallowed hard. Thank you for meeting me. She peered into the stroller. Calliope was sleeping her tiny fists under her chin. She is beautiful, Mrs. Gable said. Your mother would be beside herself. I sat down slowly. For a moment, the legal case, the betrayal, the nursery, all of it stepped back. In its place stepped my mother in my memory. Her laugh, her hands, the way she had cried when I told her I was pregnant the first time before the loss, before illness took her too fast to meet any of the babies I had hoped for. She bought the yellow sweater, I said. I remember. She showed me the yarn. Of course she did. Mrs. Gable remembered everything. She opened her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I wrote down what I saw. I stared at it. She pushed it across the table. I figure lawyers like things in writing. They do. Good. I saw that woman arrive on Tuesday night around 1015. Your husband helped her carry bags. Not one. Several. Car seat pack and play. A large suitcase. A small one. 2 grocery bags. Your mother-in-law arrived after with diapers. I read the neat handwriting. Tuesday 1015 p.m. Maria arrives. Tuesday 1042 p.m. Vesper arrives. Wednesday 8:20 a.m. Theron moves 3 cardboard boxes into the upstairs hallway, visible from the sidewalk through the open front door when the FedEx man came. My breath caught. You saw the boxes, I saw him carry one downstairs first, and then carry it back up, when Vesper waved her hand like she was telling him not to leave it where people could see. I looked up. Mrs. Gable's eyes were sharp behind her glasses. I didn't know what was in them until I saw you come home, she said. I was watering my porch ferns. I heard you say his name. My cheeks heated with a fresh wave of humiliation. She leaned forward. Do not be ashamed because someone else behaved shamefully. I pressed my lips together. She continued. Your husband told Mr. Hemsley from the HOA that Maria was his cousin. I froze. What Wednesday morning? Mr. Hemsley was checking on some sprinkler complaints. Theron introduced her as family. A cousin. Theron had rewritten Maria before I even found her. Mistress was too ugly. Guest was too temporary. Cousin sounded safe. Will you tell my lawyer that? I asked. I already wrote down my number. I laughed, then a small broken sound. Mrs. Gable, can I hug you? You may. But gently. I bruise like a peach. I hugged her gently. After coffee, I drove to Sloane's office with Mrs. Gable's notes on the passenger seat and Calliope sleeping in the back. For the first time since I left, I felt something firmer than anger. Evidence had a strange mercy to it. It took the pain out of the realm of argument. Theron could say I was sensitive. Vesper could say I misunderstood. Mireia could cry. But a timestamp didn't care. A property deed didn't care. A camera didn't care. Mrs. Gable's handwriting didn't care. They simply existed. In Sloane's office, we went through the recordings in order. I had avoided watching some of them alone because I knew they would hurt. Sloane watched them with me, pausing to label each file. Clip 1. Theron enters nursery strips. Calliope's blanket from the crib. Clip 2. Theron carries a cardboard box into the hallway. Clip 3. Vesper folds Calliope's clothes into the box while talking to Mireia. Clip 4. Mireia places Julian's diaper bag on the changing table. Clip 5. Mireia asks, are you sure she won't kick us out? Clip 6. Theron replies, she won't leave. Not with Calliope. Not without this house. The words filled the conference room. Sloane paused the video. This clip is key, she said. I nodded, but I couldn't stop looking at the frozen frame. Theron was in profile near the crib, one hand on his hip looking more irritated than conflicted. Behind him, Mireia held Julian and watched Vesper pack my daughter's clothes into a box. Vesper's face was calm. Nobody looked guilty. That hurt more than if they had looked cruel. Cruelty could be hot. This was colder. This was a group of people rearranging my life while assuming my pain would be manageable. Play the next one, I said. Sloane looked at me. You don't have to watch all of them today. I do, I said. I have to. The next clip showed Mireia alone in the room after I left. She was near the wall, peeling Calliope's letters off one by one. The audio caught her whispering to Julian. It's okay. Daddy got us a real room. Daddy. My stomach rolled. Sloane paused the video. Do you need a minute? No, but my voice sounded far away. Daddy. Theron hadn't just moved Mireia in. He had allowed her to give her baby a place in his life that he barely occupied for Calliope. I thought of all the nights he told me he wasn't good with newborns, how nervous he was, how he needed time to bond. Apparently, he had found time elsewhere. Does Julian's birth certificate list Theron? I asked. Sloane's eyes flicked to me. We don't know. We can find out, not without proper legal cause and access. But it may become relevant if he's been supporting him or holding himself out as the father. The father. A new possibility opened up beneath the old wound. I leaned back. Do you think Julian is his? Sloane chose her words carefully. I think Theron's behavior suggests an attachment he has not disclosed. But we do not assume facts we cannot prove. Methodically. Evidence first. Still, the question entered the room and refused to leave. If Julian was Theron's son, then he had moved one child into the other's nursery. If Julian wasn't his son, he still chose Mireya's child over Calliope. Neither answer saved him. At noon, Theron's credit card company called me. I ignored it. Then a text came from him. Why is my card declined? A second later. You stopped the autopay. Then Alara answered me. I showed it to Sloane. She smiled without warmth. He noticed. Just stopped paying his personal card. Like it should be. He'll say I'm being vindictive. He can pay his own bills, like an adult. That sentence shouldn't have felt revolutionary, but it did. For years, I had paid the bills because if I didn't, late fees piled up and Theron blamed stress. I had transferred money to Vesper because Theron said it was easier than listening to her complain. I had covered repairs, groceries, gifts, insurance emergencies. The house was legally mine, but I had let them make it theirs through my labor. That ended now. I spent the afternoon separating accounts. Sloane brought in a forensic financial advisor, Tamsin, who had seen too many divorces to be shocked by anything. Together, we changed passwords. We removed Theron from household management apps. We froze joint credit activity where possible and requested statements for the past 18 months. One charge stopped me. 3 purchases at a high-end baby boutique I had never used. Dates, 6 months ago, 4 months ago, 2 months ago. Total, 2,438.61. I clicked on the merchant details. Luxury crib bedding, infant apparel, deposit on a nursing chair. My mouth went dry. Theron had bought things for Mireya's baby in Manhattan while telling me we needed to keep Calliope's nursery budget reasonable. I had used coupons. I had refurbished an old dresser. I had talked myself out of the expensive organic mattress because Theron said money was tight. He had spent nearly $2,500 on another child's nursery before stealing mine. Tamsin looked at my face. Do you want to stop for today? No, I said. Print it. By evening, the evidence folder had grown again. Mrs. Gable's statement. The HOA note. The baby boutique charges. The torn legal notice. The photo of Julian in Calliope's crib. The video of Mireya whispering, "Daddy got us a real room." I sat in Fallon's apartment that night with my laptop glowing in the dark. Then I started typing. Theron moved Mireya in while I was recovering from birth. Theron put Mireya's baby in Calliope's room. Theron removed Calliope's belongings. Theron lied about contractors. Theron told his family I would adjust. Theron believed I would not leave without the house. Theron was wrong. The list looked brutal in its simplicity. I read it once. Then I added one more line. I left before they could teach my daughter how to disappear. The doorbell camera at the house sent an alert at 9:37 p.m. I opened the app. Theron was on the porch with Mireya beside him. Vesper hovered behind them. A process server stood at the bottom of the steps, calm and unfazed. Mr. Theron Carter, the man asked. Theron crossed his arms. Who's asking? The process server held out an envelope. The legal notice he hadn't wanted to sign for that morning. You've been served. Mireya took a step back. Vesper said this is harassment. The server didn't react. Miss. Mireya froze. Theron stepped in front of her. She doesn't have to take anything. The server dropped the second envelope on the porch chair. Attempted service documented, he said, and walked away. Theron snatched the envelope and ripped it open. I couldn't see the page, but I saw his face. The arrogance drained first, then the color, and finally he looked up at the doorbell camera. For the first time, I knew he understood I was watching. My phone vibrated. Theron, we need to talk. Now. I didn't answer. Another text came. Theron, you can't kick us out before sunset. I stared at the word us. Us. Not me. Us. He had picked his side again, so I picked mine. I forwarded the screenshot to Sloane and put the phone face down. Calliope sighed in her sleep. I kissed her forehead. By sunset, I whispered they'll know whose door it is. The next morning, I returned to my house with my lawyer, my sister's borrowed SUV, and my daughter sleeping in the back seat. I didn't go alone. That was Sloane's rule. It had become mine too. Mr. Hemsley from the HOA was waiting near the curb wearing a windbreaker and an expression of polite tension. Next to him was Vance, the real estate agent who had helped me buy the house 4 years ago. Vance wasn't there as an agent this morning. He was there as a witness who remembered the closing the deed and Theron joking that he had married a better credit score than he deserved. I had laughed then. Vance hadn't. Now he greeted me quietly. Alara, thanks for coming. Of course. His eyes flicked to the house. I'm sorry. That phrase had started to sound different depending on who said it. From Theron, I'm sorry meant, stop reacting. From Miria, I'm sorry meant, let me keep what I took. From Vesper, I'm sorry, never came at all. From Vance, Mrs., Gable, and Sloane, I'm sorry, meant I see what happened, and I won't ask you to pretend it didn't. Sloane reviewed the plan once more before we approached the front door. We are not forcing entry. If Theron refuses, we document. We are delivering notice. We are making it clear that consent for Mireia to stay has been withdrawn, and that Theron cannot authorize occupancy over the owner's objection. If he escalates, we leave and file for emergency temporary orders in family court. I nodded. My hands were cold. Calliope fussed in her carrier, and I rocked her gently. Maybe I should stay in the car with her, Fallon had offered earlier. I had refused. Not because I wanted Calliope near conflict, but because Theron had already threatened to block me from leaving with her once, and some animal part of me couldn't let her out of my sight. Sloane understood. We keep our distance, she said. If voices raise you, step back. I looked at the colonial. The nursery window faced the street. The curtains I had picked were still there, pale cream with tiny embroidered stars. Behind them, another child had slept. My chest tightened. Then I remembered the folder in Sloane's bag, the deed, the prenup, the notice to vacate, the recordings, methodically. We walked up the driveway. Before we reached the porch, the door opened. Mireia stood there. She was dressed carefully in leggings and an oversized sweater, her hair falling loose over her shoulders. She had Julian propped on her hip. She looked from me to Sloane to Mr. Hemsley to Vance. Her face shifted not to fear exactly, but to interrupted calculation. Alara, she said softly. I said nothing. Sloane stepped forward. Ma'am, I am Sloane Sterling, attorney for Mrs. Alara Carter, the owner of this property. Mireia's eyes darted to me. Owner. One word changed the air. This isn't a good time, Mireia said. Sloane's expression remained neutral. It will be brief. Theron appeared behind her. He was wearing yesterday's t-shirt and the look of a man who had slept poorly and blamed everyone else for it. What is this? He demanded. Sloane turned to him. Mr. Carter. You have received my communications. I've received threats. You've received legal notice. Vesper's voice called from inside. Who's at the door? Theron pushed the door open, wider stepping out onto the porch, as if the threshold were a stage he owned. Neighbors were already looking. Mrs. Gable was standing by her hydrangeas with pruning shears in one gloved hand. Good. Let them see. Theron noticed too and dropped his voice. Alara, are you making a scene? I looked at him. For years that phrase had worked on me. It had made me smooth my dress, lower my voice, apologize in the car after dinners where he mocked my work, laugh off Vesper's insults, forgive things that deserved confrontation. Now I stood on the porch of my own house with my daughter beside me, and I felt the phrase fall flat at my feet. No, I said. You're being documented. His jaw locked. Sloane handed him a copy of the notice. This confirms Mrs. Carter withdraws consent for Mireia to remain on the property. She is not on the deed. Not on the mortgage, not on the HOA registry, and holds no lease. Mr. Carter, your desires do not override the property owner's objection. Theron looked at the paper and laughed. It sounded forced. The owner, he repeated. You mean my wife? My client Sloane said. Vesper pushed past Mireia and stepped onto the porch. Enough of this, she snapped. This is a family matter. You lawyers feed on women when they're emotional. Sloane looked at her calmly. Please do not interfere. Vesper's eyes went wide. She was used to commanding rooms by volume and age. Sloane granted her neither. This is my son's home, Vesper said. Vance stepped forward before I could speak. With respect, Mrs. Carter, I handled the closing. The property was purchased by Alara prior to the marriage, using separate funds from her mother's estate. Theron was present at the closing as her fiancé, but he is not on the deed. The porch fell silent. Mireia looked at Theron. It was a small look, quick, but I saw it. He had told her something different. Theron's face darkened. Stay out of this, Vance. Vance didn't move. I'm here because Alara asked me to verify the facts. Facts? Theron exploded. The fact is I've lived here for 4 years. I've paid bills. I've fixed things. I almost laughed. The man who had once watched me hold a flashlight while a plumber fixed the sink was now recalling himself as a handyman. Sloane cut in. Any potential marital reimbursement issues will be addressed in divorce proceedings. They do not create ownership rights or permit unauthorized occupancy. Maria hiked Julian higher on her hip. I didn't know. Her voice trembled. I looked at her. Yes, I said. You did. Her eyes filled with instant tears. Theron told me you two were separating. Did you see my daughter's things in boxes? Theron cut in. Don't attack her. There it was again. The reliable flash of protection. Never for me, never for Calliope, always for Maria. I turned to Sloane. Please continue. Sloane handed Maria the second notice. You are instructed to remove your personal belongings from the property. We are asking you to vacate voluntarily by 6:00 p.m. today. If you refuse, my client will pursue all available legal action for trespass or holdover tenancy. Maria looked at Theron again. You said she couldn't do this. Theron didn't answer. Vesper stepped between them. Maria, go inside. Don't stand here letting them bully you. Mr. Hemsley cleared his throat. I need to address the HOA rules as well, he said. The young lady has not been registered as an occupant or long-term guest. The board requires notification for stays exceeding 7 days, and there are rules regarding parking and access. We will need written clarification. Theron turned on him. She hasn't been here 7 days. Then today's request to vacate should resolve it, Mr. Hemsley said smoothly. Mrs. Gable coughed from her hydrangeas. It sounded suspiciously like a laugh. Theron took a step closer to me. Sloane took a half step as well. He noticed and stopped. Are you really doing this? He asked. His voice was lower now, less theatrical, more disbelieving. Yes. To Maria. To a baby. To the adults who put their baby in my daughter's room. Maria flinched. Good. I wanted the sentence to touch her. I wanted it to settle into her the way the boxes in the hallway had settled into me. Theron looked at Calliope and her carrier for the first time all day. She shouldn't be here for this. No, I said. She shouldn't have been displaced from her own home either. His mouth formed a hard line. You keep saying that like I threw her on the street. You threw her out before she could crawl. The porch fell quiet again. Somewhere down the street, a car door slammed. Vesper whispered, That is an ugly thing to say. It was an ugly thing to do, I replied. For once, she didn't have an immediate comeback. Sloane took a small step forward. We are done for now, Mr. Carter. All further contact should be through counsel. Theron crumpled the paper in his fist, and if I don't leave, Sloane's tone didn't shift. Then you create more evidence. It was the perfect answer. Not dramatic, not threatening. True. Theron looked at me. He looked at me really then, as if trying to find the woman who would have softened the moment he seemed cornered. That woman was gone. Not dead. There's a difference. Dead you can mourn. Gone has chosen distance. I lifted Calliope's carrier and turned around. Behind me, Maria, said Theron. Her voice was thin. She was afraid now. I didn't look back. In the car, my hands shook again, but this time not from helplessness, from adrenaline, from the shock of standing up after years of bending. Sloane got into the passenger seat. You did well. I wanted to slap him, I said. You didn't. I wanted to scream at him. You didn't. I wanted to ask him since when. Sloane looked at me. You didn't, because the answer no longer changes the decision. I looked at the house through the windshield. She was right. Whether Maria had been in his life for 6 months or 2 years, whether Julian was his son or not, whether he claimed to love me her, or himself most of all, the decision was already made. He had evicted my daughter. I was evicting them. At 1:12 p.m., Theron emailed Sloane. This is coercive and abusive. Alara is using property technicalities to put a mother and baby on the street. Sloane replied, Mrs. Carter is not responsible for housing the woman you had an affair with, nor her child. You are free to secure lodging for your guest elsewhere. I read it twice, then once more for pure pleasure. At 2:35 Mir, Maria started carrying bags to Theron's SUV. The doorbell camera caught it. At 3:05 p.m., Vesper arrived with boxes and anger. At 3:40 p.m., Theron carried out Julian's pack-and-play while Maria cried on the porch. At 4:12 p.m., Theron stopped and looked directly into the doorbell camera. This isn't over, he said. I saved the clip. At 5:48 p.m., the sun was low enough to turn the front windows gold. I was sitting in Sloane's car, parked down the block. Calliope was sleeping next to me while Mr. Hemsley supervised a locksmith changing the temporary keypad code and front door lock with my written authorization. Theron was on the lawn with Maria Vesper and a pile of bags. Maria was holding Julian. Theron was holding nothing. That was the image that stuck with me. Not the anger, not the yelling, not Vesper calling me cruel loud enough for two neighbors to hear. Theron empty-handed, while two women carried the consequences of his actions. At 5:59 p.m., the locksmith locked the door and handed me the new keys. Theron took a step toward me. Alara, I looked at the sky. The sun hadn't quite set. 1 minute early, I said, and I took the keys. I didn't sleep in the house that night. Later, people assumed I did. They imagined a triumphant scene, me walking through the front door after Theron and Maria left, placing Calliope in her crib and reclaiming every inch under the golden evening light. But real victories are rarely that clean. The house still smelled like Maria's perfume. Julian's blue blanket was peeking out from under the glider. There were formula stains on the dresser I had painted white myself. Calliope's mattress had been stripped of its sheets and shoved against the closet wall. Someone had taken the yellow sweater my mother made and dropped it in the laundry room sink, damp from spilled water. When I found it, I sat on the floor and made a sound I didn't recognize. Not a scream, not a sob, something deeper. Sloane was still downstairs with the locksmith paperwork. Fallon was on speakerphone from her apartment. Calliope was asleep in her carrier, oblivious that her mother was falling apart over a ruined sweater. Grief often chooses small doors. I picked up the sweater with both hands. The wool was stretched out on one sleeve. My mother had touched every stitch. Maria had touched it too. That thought made me want to tear the room apart. Instead, I folded it carefully and wrapped it in a clean towel. Fallon's voice came through the phone. Alara, I'm here. You don't have to stay there. I looked around the room. It was legally mine, but emotionally it felt like a crime scene. I know. Come back to Brooklyn tonight. Clean it tomorrow. Burn sage, burn Theron's golf clubs. Whatever helps. Despite everything, I laughed. I'm not burning evidence. Okay, take pictures of the golf clubs first. I took pictures first. Every scuff, every misplaced item, everything that wasn't ours, every damaged piece. The blank wall where Calliope's name had been. The garbage bag with the rolled-up letters still inside. I photographed them before I touched them, methodically. After the documentation, Sloane walked through the house with me. She was careful not to react too much, but I saw her face when she noticed Maria's toiletries in the guest bathroom, Vesper's Tupperware in the fridge, Theron's laundry mixed with baby clothes that weren't Calliope's. This helps establish the intent to occupy, she said. I nodded. Then she added lower, I'm sorry. That almost undid me. I locked the house, checked the new keys twice, and drove back to Fallon's apartment for the night. At 1:23 p.m., Theron texted. You changed the locks on me. I didn't answer. A minute later, I lived there for 4 years and you act like I'm a stranger. I stared at the message. A stranger wouldn't have known which room hurt the most. A stranger couldn't have used my trust as a weapon with such precision. Theron hadn't been a stranger. That was why it hurt. The next morning, I woke up to 12 missed calls and a voicemail from Vesper. I played it while feeding Calliope. Listen to me, Alara. I don't know what poison that lawyer is putting in your head, but you are destroying your family. Men make mistakes. Women with children cannot afford pride. If you push Theron too far, don't be surprised when he fights for full custody. A judge will see how you threw a father out of his own home. I saved it. Then I sent it to Sloane. Her reply, helpful. Do not engage. I didn't. Theron engaged for both of us. At noon, his lawyer sent a letter claiming Theron had been wrongfully excluded from the marital residence and demanding immediate access. Sloane replied with the deed, the prenup excerpt, and a reminder that Theron had introduced an unauthorized occupant and refused to remove her until formally served. At 2:15 p.m., Theron filed an emergency petition in family court for 50/50 custody. At 2:35 me, he texted me, You want to play legal games? Fine. Let's see how you like seeing Calliope only half the time. I was standing in the cleaning aisle of a Target in White Plains when I read it. One hand on the cart, Calliope asleep in her car seat. A bottle of unscented detergent in front of me. For a moment, the world narrowed to the words seeing Calliope only half the time. My body reacted before my mind did. Heat in my face, ice in my hands, a roar in my ears. He had found the one threat that could still reach the deepest part of me. Not because he wanted Calliope half the time, but because he knew I was terrified of losing her. The old Alara would have called him right then. She would have cried. She would have offered a compromise. The nursery, the house, the betrayal, everything was negotiable if he just didn't touch motherhood. Instead, I took a screenshot. Then another. I forwarded them to Sloan with my message. He is threatening custody because of the house. Sloan called within 30 seconds. Are you safe? Yes. In Target. Good. Buy what you need, then come to my office. We expected this. You expected him to use Calliope. I expected him to use whatever still mattered to you. I closed my eyes. Of course. People like Theron always found the softest place. That didn't mean it belonged to them. In Sloan's office, we prepared for the temporary orders hearing. I had imagined custody as a moral question. Who loved the child more? Who woke up more often? Who knew the difference between hungry cries and gas cries? Who could find the tiny nail clippers at 3 a.m.? Sloan explained that the court required structure. Who provided primary care? Who attended medical visits? Who maintained a safe sleep environment? Who communicated responsibly? Who created instability? There, at least, Theron had done me a terrible favor. He had created evidence. We gathered Calliope's pediatric records, my postpartum follow-up notes, photos of the safe bassinet setup at Fallon's apartment receipts, showing I had purchased Calliope's formula, diapers, medicine, and clothes. The texts where Theron declined to attend pediatric visits because he had meetings. The email where he said Calliope didn't need a decorated room. The video of him moving the crib. The text threatening custody as retaliation for losing access to the house. Sloan also had me write a care log for the next week. Every feeding, diaper nap, medication appointment, and night waking went into a spreadsheet. It felt absurd at first, then empowering. Motherhood had become invisible labor too quickly. Theron saw a clean baby and assumed the baby had stayed clean by magic. He saw bottles in the cabinet and never thought about the washing, sterilizing, drying, measuring, mixing. He saw Calliope sleep and called her easy. The log made the invisible visible. In 3 days, it contained more proof of parenting than Theron had performed in Calliope's entire life. While we prepared, Maria vanished from the story of the house, but not the fallout. Mistress. Gable reported seeing Theron's car parked outside a cheap extended-stay motel near Yonkers. Maria was with him. Vesper visited them twice. Saris didn't. Saris texted me on the 4th day. Can we talk? I stared at the message for a long time. Saris was Theron's younger sister. She was 30, a nurse, and the only person in his family who had ever apologized without being cornered first. She hadn't defended me in the living room, but she had looked uncomfortable. At the time, discomfort had felt like cowardice. Now I wondered if it was the beginning of realization. I am listening, I replied. Her response came slowly. I didn't know Maria was the woman he was having an affair with. Mom said she was a friend from work who fell on hard times. I thought you knew she was staying for one night. I closed my eyes. Vesper had lied to Saris, too. Another message popped up. I'm sorry about Calliope's nursery. I wanted to reject it. And I'm sorry didn't put the boxes back. And I'm sorry didn't stick the name back on the wall. But Saris's apology didn't come with a demand attached. So I wrote, "Thank you," she replied. "Mom is telling everyone you're unstable." I don't believe her. I didn't send evidence. Not yet. But I typed. The nanny cam recorded what happened. There was a long pause. Then Saris wrote, "Oh my God." That night, Theron tried another strategy. He came to the house. The doorbell camera alerted me at 8:14 p.m. I was inside the nursery with gloves on, sorting through what could be salvaged. Sloan had advised me not to be there alone for long, but I had to start. The room couldn't stay frozen as the place where my daughter was erased. I opened the video feed. Theron was on the porch holding a bouquet of white roses. White roses. The same flowers he used to bring after arguments because he said red roses were too dramatic. I watched him ring the bell. I didn't open the door. He rang it again. "I know you're in there, Alara," he said to the camera. I was. Calliope was downstairs in her portable bassinet, sleeping in plain sight from the hallway. I had my phone in my hand, Sloan on speed dial. Theron held up the flowers. "I want to talk. No lawyers. No everyone else in our business." I almost admired the audacity. He had crowdsourced our humiliation to Maria Vesper relatives, neighbors, a process server, the HOA president, and a doorbell camera. Now that the facts had turned on him, he wanted privacy. I spoke through the intercom. "You can email Sloan." His face hardened, then deliberately softened. "Alara, please. I miss my daughter. You can arrange visitation through counsel. I miss you too." The words entered the house and found nowhere to land. Before I would have opened the door for that sentence, Before I would have looked at the flowers and remembered the man from our early days, the one who drove across Manhattan to bring me soup when I had the flu, the one who cried during our vows, the one who placed his hand over my mother's hospital blanket and promised he would take care of me. But memory isn't character. It's just a costume from before the reveal. You need to leave, I said. He looked toward the street. Are you really going to leave me out here? Yes. This is my house. It wasn't just your house when you trusted me. His face shifted. For a second, I saw hatred flash through the mask. Then he looked up at the camera. You're going to regret making me the enemy. I didn't answer. He threw the roses on the porch. The white petals scattered across the welcome mat. Then he walked away. I saved the recording. By sunset, I had cleared every trace of Maria from Calliope's room. But I didn't move my daughter in yet. Not because I was afraid, but because reclaiming a room isn't the same as healing it. I stood in the doorway, holding the rolled-up letters of my daughter's name, and realized something very simple. The room didn't need to be restored to what it was. Neither did I. Family court smelled like old paper, stale coffee, and rain-soaked coats. It was the kind of building where every hallway sounded exhausted. People sat on wooden benches, holding folders containing the worst parts of their lives. A couple argued in whispers near the vending machine. A man in a suit stared at the floor, while a woman next to him bounced a toddler on her knee and wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I sat between Sloane and Fallon. Calliope was asleep in her car seat at my feet. Fallon had flown back the night before, arriving at my apartment makeup-free with 2 suitcases and the fury of a sister who had spent 6 hours on a plane imagining felonies. She had cried when she saw Calliope. Then she asked where Theron was living now and if the motel had security cameras. I told her not to commit a crime. She said she was just gathering intelligence. Now she sat next to me in the courthouse, bouncing her knee under the bench. Sloane reviewed the file calmly. Today is the temporary orders hearing, she reminded me. The court isn't making final judgments. We are asking for primary physical custody to remain with you, supervised or structured visitation for Theron at this stage, and exclusive use of the marital residence during the divorce proceedings. And if the judge thinks I overreacted, Sloane looked at me. Then we show her why you didn't. Down the hall. Theron appeared with his lawyer. He wore a dark suit and the grave expression of a man attending the funeral of his own reputation. Vesper walked beside him wearing navy blue pearls and a pinched mouth. Maria was not there. Theron saw me and immediately looked down at Calliope, not with tenderness, but as part of the performance. He walked over slowly. Sloane stood up. Theron's lawyer touched his elbow, warning him. Theron stopped 3 feet away. Can I see her? He asked. It was the first polite thing he had said in days. Still, my body tensed. Sloane answered before I had to. In the hallway, we cannot facilitate temporary contact prior to the hearing. His eyes darted to me. You're keeping me from my daughter now. Fallon let out a sharp breath. I touched her wrist. No, I said. I am keeping her out of hallway drama. Vesper scoffed. You're enjoying this. I turned to her. For years, Vesper had been able to make me feel 14 years old with a single look. Too sensitive, too quiet, too ambitious, too tired, too pregnant, too much or not enough, depending on what she needed me to be. Now I saw her clearly a terrified woman because if I stopped absorbing the consequences of Theron's actions, some of them might finally hit him. No, I said. I'm documenting it. Vesper snapped her mouth shut. Sloane touched my elbow. Inside, she murmured. The judge was a woman with gray hair, rimless glasses, and the brisk manner of someone allergic to theatrics. The placard read, Honorable Judge M. Ortiz. Theron's lawyer spoke first. He painted a picture of sudden maternal instability. Ilara had abandoned the marital home. Ilara had changed the locks. Ilara had weaponized the property title. Ilara was denying a loving father access to his newborn daughter during the fragile bonding period. The words were polished. They almost would have been convincing if the facts didn't exist. Theron sat at the table, eyes down, hands clasped. Vesper watched the judge with solemn disapproval as if the legal process offended her personally. Then Sloane stood up. Your Honor, my client left the family home after discovering Mr. Carter had moved his mistress, Maria, and her infant son into the nursery, prepared for the party's newborn daughter, Calliope. He did this without notice or consent. While my client was recovering from childbirth, he removed Calliope's belongings from the nursery and placed them in boxes in the hallway. The judge looked up. That was the first shift. Sloane continued. The property is deeded solely in Carter's name and protected by a prenuptial agreement submitted to the court. Mr. Carter subsequently threatened custody litigation as retaliation after receiving a formal notice to vacate for the unauthorized occupant. We have texts, video recordings, witness statements, and financial records. Theron's lawyer stood. Your Honor, we object to the characterization of Miss Maria as a mistress at this stage. Sloan nodded. We can use Mr. Carter's own emails and recordings to contextualize. The label matters less than the conduct. The judge turned to Theron's lawyer. Was another woman and her child moved into the baby's nursery? His lawyer hesitated. That hesitation was worth every hour of documentation. There was a temporary housing arrangement, he said. In the baby's room, the judge asked. The newborn's room. The lawyer looked at his notes. Yes, Your Honor, but the newborn was able to sleep safely elsewhere. The judge's eyebrows went up. Sloan didn't smile. I loved her for it. She handed copies of the photos to the clerk. The judge reviewed them. The boxes in the hallway. The crib with Julian's blue sheet. The torn vinyl name decal. My daughter's sweater in the sink. I kept my eyes on the table because I didn't want to watch a stranger witness my humiliation. But then the judge said, This is deeply concerning. 2 words. My lungs opened. Sloan played the first clip without theatrics. Theron stripping Calliope's blankets. Vesper folding clothes into boxes. Mireya standing nearby. Then the audio. She won't leave. Not with Calliope. Not without this house. The courtroom was so quiet I heard Fallon inhale next to me. The judge looked at Theron. He stared straight ahead. His lawyer rubbed his forehead. Sloan played the second clip. Mireya peeling Calliope's name off the wall. Then the third. Theron's text. You want to play legal games? Fine. Let's see how you like seeing Calliope only half the time. The judge's expression hardened. Mr. Carter, she said, did you send this text? Theron's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client was experiencing an emotional moment. The judge didn't even look at him. Mr. Carter. Theron swallowed. Yes. Did you move Miss Mireya and her child into the baby's nursery without your wife's consent? He looked at his lawyer. The judge waited. Yes, he finally said. But I thought it was temporary. Did you communicate this to your wife beforehand? No. Did you remove your newborn daughter's belongings? He clenched his jaw. I put them in boxes in the hallway. While the child's mother was recovering postpartum, Theron flushed. Yes. The judge made a note. Vesper shifted in her seat. Sloan then introduced the care log, the pediatric records, and the list of appointments I had attended alone. Theron's lawyer tried to argue that work obligations didn't make a man a bad father. Sloan agreed with him. She then pointed out that threatening custody as retaliation for a property dispute did not demonstrate decision-making centered on the child's best interests. Theron stared at me. I didn't look away this time. He had wanted the court to see me as hysterical. Instead, the court saw him as negligent. When the judge issued the temporary orders, her voice was clear. Primary physical custody remained with me pending final judgment. Theron was granted scheduled visitation twice a week at a supervised family center for the first month to be expanded only if he complied with communication and parenting requirements. Both parties were ordered not to disparage each other in the presence of the child. Theron was ordered not to bring Calliope into contact with Mireya, pending further review. Exclusive use of the marital residence was granted to me. Vesper made a strangled sound. Theron went pale. I didn't celebrate. The celebration would come later, or maybe not at all. Some victories sit too close to fear to feel like joy at first. But when Sloan touched my arm and whispered, "You got it," I looked down at Calliope. She had slept through the entire proceeding. That was as it should be. I had fought so she could sleep outside of courtrooms. Theron broke away from his lawyer and walked toward me. Sloan stepped between us. He ignored her. "Alara," he said. I adjusted Calliope's blanket. "You got what you wanted." I looked up. What I wanted was to bring my daughter home to her nursery. His face twisted. "Are you really going to keep punishing me for one mistake?" "One mistake," Fallon said, standing up so fast her bag fell off her shoulder. I grabbed her wrist again. Theron looked at my sister with naked dislike. "Stay out of my marriage?" Fallon let out a harsh laugh. "Your marriage, you moved your side piece into her nursery." People turned to look. Theron's face darkened. "You don't know anything." Sloan spoke firmly. "This conversation is over." I started walking. Theron followed for 2 steps. "Alara, wait." I stopped. Not because he deserved it, but because I was done running away from the scenes he created. He looked at Calliope, then at me. For the first time, his eyes filled with tears. "I didn't think you'd go this far." There it was. Not, "I didn't mean to hurt you." Not, "I was wrong." "I didn't think you'd go this far." He had banked on my grief. He had miscalculated my response. "You should have," I said. And I walked away. In the parking lot, while Fallon settled Calliope's carrier into the car, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. A text. "It's Maria. I need to talk." Theron lied to me, too. I stared at the screen. Fallon leaned over. "Who is it?" I showed the phone to Sloane. Her expression turned sharp. "Do not meet her alone." I looked back at the courthouse doors where Theron still stood, with Vesper both watching me like I had become someone dangerous. Maybe I had. Not dangerous like them, but dangerous to them. "Okay," I said. "Let's hear what she has to say." Maria chose a park. That told me she still wanted to orchestrate the setting. A park meant open-air mothers with strollers. Sunlight filtering through trees, a place where she could look fragile and safe. A place where, if I raised my voice, I would become the villain she had been trying to make me since the day I found her in the nursery. So I changed the venue. I told her via Sloane that we would meet in her firm's conference room with lawyers present and no children in the room. Maria pushed back, then agreed. When she arrived, she looked different without my house wrapped around her. Smaller, somehow. Not innocent. Just less powerful. She wore jeans, a cream cardigan, and no makeup except mascara that made her eyes look wet before she even cried. Julian wasn't with her. A woman I assumed was a friend waited in the lobby with the stroller. Maria sat across from me and kept her hands wrapped around a paper cup of tea she didn't drink. Sloane sat beside me. A paralegal turned on a recorder after we all signed consent forms. "State your full name," Sloane requested. Maria swallowed. Mireya Beltran. "You requested this meeting." "Yes." Why, Mireya looked at me. She seemed to expect something from me. Anger, maybe, or pity. A sign that if she told her story well enough, I would soften the way Theron had calculated. I gave her nothing. She looked back at Sloane. "Theron lied," she said. Sloane waited. Maria took a breath. "He told me he and Alara were emotionally separated. He said they were only staying together until the baby was born. And then they would figure out the logistics." I almost laughed. Logistics. My daughter's birth had been a logistical hurdle for their affair. "He told me the house was basically his," Maria continued. "That Alara bought it before the wedding, but they paid for it together, and he would keep it in the divorce or force a sale." Sloane took notes. "He told you that?" "Yes." "Do you have text to prove it?" Maria nodded. "Some." "Did he tell you?" "Mrs. Carter consented to you moving in." Maria hesitated. There it was. The crack, carefully, Sloane said. Maria's eyes flicked back to me. "No," she whispered. "Not exactly." "What did he tell you?" He said. She wouldn't like it at first, but she would accept it. He said she was too attached to the house to leave. The words weren't new. Still hearing Maria say them made my skin run cold. Sloane asked, "Did you know the nursery belonged to Calliope Carter?" Maria looked down. "Yes." "Did you know Calliope's belongings were removed to make room for your child?" Her fingers tightened on the cup. "Yes." "Did you participate?" "I didn't move the boxes." Sloane said nothing. Maria's voice rose slightly. "I didn't." "It was Theron and Vesper. You laid your child in Calliope's crib." "Yes. But Theron told me it was okay. You peeled Calliope's name off the wall." Mireya closed her eyes. "Yes." The room fell silent. My heart kicked hard. Sloane glanced at me. "A brief check-in." I nodded. "Why?" Sloane asked. Mireya wiped under one eye. "Because it hurt to look at. That answer was so honest, so selfish, that for a moment I couldn't process it." "It hurt you?" I asked. My voice was barely a murmur. Mireya flinched as if I had screamed. "You had my daughter's name on the wall," I said in my daughter's room. "And it hurt you." Her tears spilled over. "I know how it sounds." I didn't interrupt her. "You know exactly how it sounds. That's why you're crying before I do." Sloane brushed my wrist lightly. A reminder. Methodically, I leaned back. Mireya took a shaky breath. "I thought if Julian had a space there, Theron would finally stop hesitating," she said. There it was. Not homelessness. Not an emergency. Strategy. "You used your baby as an anchor in my house," I said. She looked ashamed. Then for the first time, she looked real. But real shame didn't undo real damage. "Theron promised he would take care of us," she whispered. "He said after Calliope was born, you would be too focused on the baby to fight a divorce. He said you hated confrontation. He said you'd rather keep the peace than go to court." Sloane's pen stopped. "Did he discuss financial arrangements?" Mireya nodded slowly. "He said once the house was sold or refinanced, he'd help me get an apartment. Maybe buy one later." Refinanced. Sloane and I looked at each other. That was the word that opened the next door. "Did he ask you to sign anything?" Sloane asked. No. Did he mention needing Alara's signature? Maria looked at the table. He said paperwork was a hassle. He said he could handle it. Sloane's expression turned razor sharp. You have that in writing. Maria opened her purse and pulled out her phone. I have texts. She sent them to Sloane. I watched the files pop up on the firm's screen. Theron, once I unlock the equity in the house, everything gets easier. Maria, what about Alara? Theron, she signs whatever I put in front of her. She never reads the banking stuff. Maria, are you sure, Theron? I've been managing her for years. My vision blurred at the edges. Managing her. Not loving her, managing her. Sloane's voice came from beside me, steady and low. Alara, breathe. I did. In through my nose, out through my mouth. Calliope wasn't in the room. She was with Fallon downstairs in Sloane's private waiting area. I imagined her tiny hand gripping Fallon's finger, and I forced myself to stay seated. Maria was crying quietly now. I didn't know he was trying to forge anything she said. I swear to you, I thought he was just going to convince you. Convince me, I repeated. She didn't look up. Did you know I had just given birth? I asked. Yes. Did you know I was recovering? Yes. Did you know Calliope had never spent a single night in that room? Maria covered her mouth. Yes. Then don't ask me to believe you didn't know you were helping him hurt me. She cried harder. I felt nothing. That scared me for a second. Then I realized the absence of feeling wasn't cruelty. It was a boundary, arriving late and locking the door. Sloane continued the questioning. Maria admitted Theron paid for baby items with a card tied to our household account. She admitted Vesper had encouraged her to settle in quickly before I returned from the hospital. She admitted Theron told her I would be upset but manageable. She admitted she had hoped I would leave the house because it would be easier. Easier for whom no one needed to ask. At the end, Sloane asked, Are you willing to sign a sworn affidavit? Maria hesitated. If I do, will you drop any claims against me? I almost admired her instinct. Even in a confession she negotiated. Sloane replied, We are not offering immunity. We are asking if you want your statement on the record to reflect the truth. Maria looked at me. Theron says you're going to ruin him. I stood up slowly. Sloane watched me, but didn't stop me. I looked down at Maria. Not because I wanted power over her, but because I was done making myself small for women who walked into my life through my husband's lies and then chose to stay for his promises. I didn't forge signatures, I said. I didn't move a newborn out of her room. I didn't invite you into my house. I didn't rip a baby's name off a wall. If the truth ruins Theron, it's because he built something that couldn't survive it. Maria looked away. She signed the affidavit. After she left, Sloane closed the conference room door and turned to me. We need to investigate that mortgage refinancing immediately. How do we pull the bank records? We contact the lender. We check if an application was initiated. If he submitted something with your name on it, this becomes much larger. My stomach rolled. Larger than divorce. Potentially fraud. The words settled in the room like smoke. I thought of Theron's text. She signs whatever I put in front of her. I had believed it because it had almost been true. How many times had he shoved papers in front of me while I drank coffee, half listening because I trusted him? Insurance updates, tax filings, HOA renovations. Just sign here, babe. It's routine. Trust is efficient until someone corrupts it. Then it becomes a loaded weapon they aimed long before you knew there was a gun. Sloane called the mortgage lender that afternoon with me beside her. After identity verification and a long hold, we discovered that, yes, an inquiry had been made. An online application for a home equity line of credit HELOC had been initiated in both our names. It was incomplete, but a PDF signature authorization page had been uploaded. It bore my name. I had never seen it. My hands went cold. Sloane requested copies through formal channels. The bank representative sounded increasingly cautious when Sloane identified herself as my attorney. By the end of the call, Sloane had enough to send a preservation of evidence demand. Do we confront him? I asked. No, she said. We let the documents speak first. But Theron confronted himself. At 7:46 p.m., he texted, Maria told me she talked to you. Whatever she said is a lie. She's crazy. I stared at the message. Crazy. The word moved easily between the women in his life. First me, then Maria. Never him. Another text came. Don't use private texts in court. It's illegal. It wasn't not the way Maria provided them. Then Alara answered me. Then I loved you. I made mistakes, but you're turning everyone against me. I thought of the boxes in the hallway, the torn vinyl, the credit card charges, the HELOC application. I've been managing her for years. I typed one sentence, all communication through our lawyers, and hit send. For once, I felt better saying nothing else. The signature looked like mine if you didn't know me well. That was the worst part. It had the same open E, the same elongated loop on the L, the same slight slant that made the name Carter look rushed, even if I wrote it slowly. But it was wrong. Too smooth. Too confident. My real signature had a pause between Alara and Carter, because even after 4 years of marriage, I sometimes hesitated before using his name. The forged one connected the words seamlessly. Sloan placed the bank copy next to 3 samples of my actual signature, my passport renewal, the prenup, and Calliope's hospital discharge paperwork. Here, I said, tapping the pause. Sloan nodded. I see it. Tamsin, the financial advisor, sat across from us with the bank statements spread out. The application was initiated 9 days before Calliope was born. 9 days. I had been massive, swollen, barely sleeping, sitting on the nursery floor folding burp cloths while Theron started the paperwork to borrow against my house. What was the requested amount? I asked. Tamsin's mouth tightened. $180, 000. The room went silent. I felt the number hit my system like ice water. For what, debt consolidation and home improvements, Tamsin said. That's what the application states. Theron didn't have $180 0 inches renovations planned. He had Maria. He had promises. He had a fantasy where the equity in my house became his escape fund. Sloan leaned back. We need a handwriting expert, but given your denial and the discrepancy, this is extremely serious. He might say you gave verbal consent. He might say anything. The bank required a signed authorization. If it isn't yours, that is wire fraud and forgery. I looked at the paper. For days, the nursery had been the center of the wound. Now the wound had widened. Theron hadn't just taken space from me. He had tried to take money. My mother's money. The house she helped me secure. The protection she insisted on before she died. I thought of her in Sloan's office years ago, thinner than she wanted me to notice, wearing a scarf over the hair she was already losing to chemo. She had held my hand while Sloan explained the separate property designations. Honey, my mother had said, I hope you never need this, but if you do, I don't want you scared and empty-handed. I had cried then, thinking she meant widowhood. She meant life. Sloan gathered the documents. We bring this up in mediation. We evaluate reporting it criminally depending on what the bank produces. It also gives us overwhelming leverage in the divorce. He will face potential prison time if fraud is proven. But that is not the immediate goal. The immediate goal is protecting you, Calliope, and the assets. Protect, not punish. I repeated it to myself because it was easy to drown in the anger. And I didn't need anger to survive. I needed clarity. Divorce mediation was scheduled for the following week at a neutral office in Midtown. Theron had resisted, then agreed, likely after his lawyer explained that evidence doesn't improve with time. I arrived wearing a navy dress, low heels, and no wedding ring. I had taken the ring off the night after the custody hearing. No drama, no audience. Just slipped it off while washing bottles and dropped it into a small envelope labeled marital asset. Romance had become inventory. Theron noticed my bare hand immediately. His eyes lingered on it for 2 seconds too long. Good. Let the absent speak. He sat across the mediation table with his lawyer. Vesper wasn't allowed in, which improved the oxygen in the room. Sloan sat beside me. The mediator, a quiet man named Elias, began with the usual statements about resolution, cooperation, and avoiding unnecessary litigation. Theron looked awful. Not yet ruined, but diminished. The sharp suit couldn't hide the dark circles. His hair was too perfectly styled in a way that suggested panicked grooming. He didn't look at me when Elias asked if both parties understood the process. Then the negotiation began. Theron wanted 50/50 custody once the temporary period ended. He wanted access to the house to retrieve his remaining items. He wanted his mortgage contributions reimbursed. He wanted me to stop defaming him to his family members. He wanted the refinancing issue excluded because it was a misunderstanding. Sloan listened. Then she opened our binder. I almost felt bad for Theron's lawyer. Almost. Sloan started with the deed, then the prenup, then the custody order, then the video stills, then the text messages, then Maria's signed affidavit, and finally the HELOC application with the forged signature. Theron's lawyer asked for a private caucus immediately after seeing the signature page. Elias separated us into different rooms for 40 minutes. Sloan and I sat in a small breakout room with cream walls and bad coffee, while Theron's side had what I imagined was a very unpleasant conversation. I fed Calliope the bottle Fallon had prepped, watching her tiny hand open and close against my finger. "You're very calm," Sloane said. "I don't feel calm. You look calm. It's a new look for you." She smiled faintly. "It suits you." Elias returned first. "Mr. Carter is prepared to discuss a more realistic framework," he said. Sloane raised an eyebrow. "Glad to hear it." Back in the main room, Theron wouldn't look at me. His lawyer spoke for him. Theron would concede the Colonial was my separate property. He would waive any claim to ownership in exchange for a review of limited reimbursement for documented marital contributions offset by the unauthorized credit card charges and damages. He would agree to a no-contact order between Calliope and Maria. He would agree to a parenting class. He would agree to continue supervised visitation at the center for 8 more weeks. He would not admit fault regarding the signature. Sloane spoke. "Then we are not done." Theron finally looked up. "Are you trying to destroy me?" His voice broke for a dangerous second. The room vanished, and I saw the man from our wedding, eyes wet, holding my hands, promising for better or worse without understanding either. Then I saw him on the nanny cam. She signs whatever I put in front of her. I leaned forward. "No," I said. "I'm trying to stop you from using me." He flinched. Maybe because it was true. Maybe because no one had ever said it to him so plainly. "I never used you." Sloane slid the bank statement forward. I put my hand over it before she could speak. Not to stop her, but to speak for myself. "You used my account to pay for Maria's baby boutique purchases," I said. "You used my postpartum recovery time to move her into the house. You used my daughter's room to prove a point to your mistress. You used my trust to initiate a loan application. You used custody to scare me when the house didn't work. What word would make you more comfortable?" His face flushed. Elias, the mediator, looked at his notes. Theron's lawyer whispered something to him. Theron shook his head. "You don't understand what it was like for me." I almost smiled. There it was, the beginning of his grand justification. He had been so lonely. I had been so tired. Maria had listened. Vesper had pressured him. The baby came at a hard time. Money was stressful. He never meant for it to go this far. I knew the shape of his excuses before he made them, because I had spent years helping him sand down the edges of his behavior until they looked like circumstances instead of choices. Not anymore. "What was it like?" I asked. "Watching me carry your daughter while you planned where to put hers?" The room went completely silent. Theron opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Sloane didn't rescue him. Neither did his lawyer. For once, nobody translated his silence into pain. It stood as exactly what it was, a void where accountability should have been. Elias cleared his throat and suggested another break. During the pause, Theron asked to speak to me alone. Sloane said no before I could. Then she looked at me. "Your choice, but my advice is no." My answer is no. She nodded. 5 minutes later, Theron knocked on the door of our breakout room anyway. Sloane opened it halfway. "This is highly inappropriate," she said. He ignored her and looked at me. "Alara, please." 2 minutes. I stood up. Sloane watched me. "I will speak from the doorway," I said. "With you right here." Theron's face tightened with humiliation. Fine. The private access to me was over. He gripped the doorframe with one hand. "I panicked," he said. That was his opening. Not "I betrayed you." I panicked. About what? Everything. The baby. Money. Us. You were so consumed with Calliope even before she was born. Maria needed me. It felt good to be needed. I stared at him. "I needed you when I was bleeding after delivery." He closed his eyes. "Don't. I needed you when Calliope wouldn't latch and I was crying in the bathroom. Alara, I needed you when your mother told me I looked terrible in all the photos and you said nothing." His jaw worked. "I'm sorry. I'm saying it now." "You're saying it now? Because there are consequences." He looked at me then, his eyes bright with tears. "I loved you." Past tense. Maybe accidental, maybe honest. I didn't ask which. "I loved you too," I said. His face shifted a flash of hope. Then I finished the sentence. "That's why I know exactly how much you destroyed." The hope died. He took a step back. "I can't lose everything." I looked at him for a long time. "You should have thought of that before you took everything from the rest of us." And I closed the door. By the end of mediation, we didn't have a final agreement, but we had progress. Theron's lawyer knew the signature issue was a loaded gun. Theron knew I wouldn't meet him alone. The mediator knew who held the evidence and who only held emotions. As we left the building, Theron caught up to me on the sidewalk. Sloane was a few paces behind, taking a call. Fallon was waiting with the car. Theron kept his distance this time. "Is Julian yours?" I asked before he could speak. The question fell out of me without planning. His face shifted. Not enough to give me certainty, but enough to wake suspicion. "That's not your business," he said. I gave a short, cold laugh. "You made his crib my business." He looked away. That was answer enough for now. Later, Sloane would pursue the legal relevance of it. Later, Maria would admit Theron had refused a paternity test because the ambiguity gave him control over both families. Later, it would become just another thread in the web he had spun. But standing on that sidewalk, I realized I didn't need the answer to decide. Theron had fathered the betrayal. That was enough. The first time Calliope slept in her nursery, it was mostly empty. Not because I lacked furniture, but because I had removed everything that held the wrong memory. The crib stayed, but only after I scrubbed it, replaced the mattress, and washed the frame until my hands smelled like soap for hours. The glider went to storage. I couldn't sit in it without seeing Maria. The changing table stayed because my mother had helped me pick it out online from her hospital bed, and I refused to let Maria take that away too. The walls were bare where the name decal had been. I left them that way for a week. A blank wall can be merciful. It doesn't demand joy before you're ready for it. Fallon helped me paint on a Tuesday afternoon while Calliope slept downstairs. We chose a warmer white, not pink. The room felt brighter, cleaner, less like the dream I had built for a marriage that no longer existed, and more like a beginning I could still choose. "Are you sure you don't want to paint clouds?" Fallon asked, holding the roller. "Stars, maybe?" A feminist slogan. I looked at her. She grinned. "What? My crib, my rules has potential." I laughed so hard I had to sit on the floor. It felt like breathing pure oxygen. After the paint dried, I placed my mother's repaired yellow sweater in a deep shadow box frame. The dry cleaner had done their best. The sleeve still showed a slight stretch, but I no longer saw just the damage. I saw the survival. I hung it near the window, not as decoration, but as lineage. Calliope would know she was loved by women who prepared rooms, saved documents, and walked back from humiliation with the keys to their own houses in their hands. Theron's visitation started that same week. Supervised at a family center with cheerful murals, plastic toys, and staff trained to watch parents pretending not to be watched. I didn't attend the first one. Sloane told me I didn't have to. Fallon drove Calliope while I sat in the passenger seat, and a supervisor brought her inside. Theron arrived holding a stuffed elephant and looking devastated. I watched from the car as he walked into the building. My body wanted to run in and get Calliope. My mind knew she was safe. Both things were true. When the visit ended, the center's report noted that Theron held Calliope, awkwardly asked twice if it was time to feed her yet, and broke down crying about the divorce. He was redirected to focus on the minor child, the report read. Redirected to focus on the child. A sentence strangers had to teach him. The second visit was better. The third was worse. He tried to send a note back in Calliope's diaper bag. "Alara, I know I broke everything. Please let me come to the house to talk. I'll do anything." Sloane added it to the file. Vesper tried too. She sent a handwritten letter addressed to the mother of my granddaughter, which proved to me she couldn't even write my name. "One day, Calliope will ask why you kept her father away. I hope you are prepared to answer for choosing pride over forgiveness. Maria is gone. Theron is hurting. A good mother thinks of the whole family, not just herself." I read it once, then filed it in the evidence folder under family pressure. Fallon wanted to mail a glitter bomb back to her. I told her no. Then I bought one and kept it in my drawer just in case. Personal growth isn't perfection. Saris came to see me 2 days later. She brought diapers, takeout, and 0 excuses. We sat in the kitchen while Calliope slept in the next room. Saris looked thinner than I remembered, her face tight. "I saw the recordings," she said. I froze. How Mom left Theron's laptop open. I saw one video before she slammed it shut. Saris's eyes filled with tears. "The boxes." I said nothing. She twisted her hands together. "I should have said something that day." "Yes," I said. She flinched, then nodded. "I know. That honesty softened me more than denial would have." Saris wiped her cheek. "Mom told us Maria was basically homeless, and that you had agreed to help her out after the birth. When I got here and saw the nursery, I thought maybe there was an arrangement I didn't understand. Then you made that face." She stopped. "What face?" "Like someone who was just cut open and told to be grateful for the surgery." My throat tightened. Saris looked toward the hallway. "I'm so sorry. I believe you." She exhaled shakily. But I'm not going to manage your family's guilt, I said. She nodded quickly. I'm not asking you to. I just wanted you to know that I told Theron I won't lie for him anymore. Mom is furious. That mattered. Not enough to fix everything, but enough to draw a line. Thank you, I said. Sarah smiled sadly. I should be thanking you. Why? For making it impossible to keep pretending this is normal. After she left, I stood in the doorway of the nursery for a long time. That was the thing about boundaries. They didn't just keep the harm out. Sometimes they gave other people permission to stop participating in it. Theron came to the Colonial one last time the night before the final settlement was signed. No flowers this time. No, nothing. The doorbell camera alerted me at 8:14 p.m. Calliope was asleep upstairs. I was folding tiny onesies on the living room floor. I opened the camera feed. He looked older. For a second, I almost opened the door. Almost. Instead, I spoke through the intercom. You shouldn't be here. He looked up. I know. I just wanted to see the house. It's not yours to come see. His mouth twisted. I helped make it a home. I looked around. The wall where our wedding photo hung was blank now. His golf magazines were gone. Vesper's welcome mat was gone. The kitchen calendar no longer held his work dinners, his mother's appointments, his reminders. He had helped make it a home maybe once, but I had confused presence with contribution too many times. You helped make it unsafe, I said. He flinched. I didn't come to fight. Then why did you come? He looked up at the second-floor window. Calliope. Does she sleep in there now? Yes. His eyes filled with tears. They were real. I hated that they were real. It would have been easier if every part of him was a lie. But people can love what they damage. That's why leaving hurts so much. Can I see her? He asked. No, Theron. I'm her father. Then act like one from the places the court allows you to be. He looked down at his shoes. Maria left me. I believed him. It didn't change anything. She moved out of the motel, he continued. She's staying with a friend. Says she might file a claim against me. You should talk to your lawyer. I don't care about Maria. You cared when you moved her in here. His face crumpled. I was an idiot, not cruel. I shook my head. I never wanted to hurt Calliope. I walked closer to the door, though I still didn't open it. That's what I keep thinking about, I said. You didn't need to want to hurt her. You just needed to forget that it would matter to her. He covered his face with one hand. For a moment, I only heard his breathing through the doorbell speaker. Then he whispered, Will you ever forgive me? Forgiveness. People love that word when the consequences get heavy. They want it to be a bridge back to comfort. But forgiveness? If it ever came, wouldn't be the key to my house. I don't know, I said honestly. But even if I do, someday you are never living here again. He looked up. There it was, the last hope leaving him. Is that really what you want? I looked toward the stairs where my daughter slept under a name freshly painted on the wall by my own hand. Calliope. Not peeled off, not temporary, not negotiable. Yes, I said. Theron took a step back. For once, he didn't threaten, didn't accuse, didn't tell me I would regret it. He just turned around and walked down the driveway. I watched him until the camera feed was empty, then I went upstairs. The nursery was quiet. Calliope was sleeping in her crib, one small hand open near her face, the moon lamp glowing softly on the clean wall above her. Instead of the old vinyl decal, I had hung wooden letters Fallon and I painted together. Calliope Elara Carter, my name given to her as a middle name. The lineage of my family restored inside her. I sat on the floor next to the crib. For the first time since the hallway, I cried without trying to hold it in. Not because I wanted Theron back, but because I didn't. That was grief too. The final hearing took less time than the destruction leading up to it. That surprised me. I had imagined dramatic objections, yelling, maybe Vesper collapsing in a performance of maternal heartbreak. But by then, Theron's lawyer had done what good lawyers do when evidence becomes a brick wall, he advised settlement. Theron signed the terms 3 days before the trial. The house remained mine. He waived any claim to ownership, forced sale refinancing, and access without written permission. He accepted liability for his personal debts, including the baby boutique charges for Maria. He agreed to reimburse a portion of the unauthorized household spending. He agreed to pay child support based on his income. He agreed to a stepped-up visitation schedule that started at the family center and only expanded after parenting classes, consistent attendance, and no contact between Calliope and Maria. The signature issue didn't vanish. The bank opened an internal fraud review. Sloan maintained my right to press criminal charges if necessary. Theron's lawyer insisted it was a miscommunication. Sloane told him miscommunications rarely involve forged signatures. Maria signed her affidavit. Vesper refused to apologize. Cirrus came to court anyway. She sat in the gallery behind me, not behind Theron. Vesper noticed. The sound she made was small but satisfying. Judge Ortiz reviewed the agreement with the impatience of someone who has watched too many people mistake their selfishness for complexity. "Mrs. Carter," she said, looking at me over her glasses. "Do you understand the custody provisions?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Mr. Carter, do you understand that failure to comply with this agreement may impact your future parenting time?" Theron's voice was low. "Yes, Your Honor." He looked smaller in the courtroom than he had in my hallway. Not because the room was bigger, but because he had been stripped of all his certainty. The judge approved the settlement just like that. My marriage ended between signatures. No thunder, no music, no cinematic justice. A clerk stamping a seal. The click of a pen. Sloane placed a hand over mine briefly. "Done," she said. "Done." The word moved through me slowly. I expected relief to arrive like sunlight. Instead, it arrived like exhaustion. My body understood it before my heart did. The fight was over. At least this part. I didn't have to prove the house was mine anymore. I didn't have to prove the nursery was taken from me. I didn't have to prove that what happened wasn't a misunderstanding or hormones or pride. The court record held it all now. Outside the courtroom, Vesper was waiting near the elevators. Theron stood next to her, his eyes red. Sarah stood a few feet away, clearly not with them, but not quite with me either. Vesper took a step toward me. Sloane's posture shifted. Vesper ignored her and looked at Calliope in my arms. "One day she will hate you for breaking this family," she said. There it was, her last stone. Small, sharp, familiar. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I cradled Calliope gently and said, "No. One day she will ask what happened, and I will tell her the truth in a way a child can handle. I will tell her that adults make choices, and that mothers are allowed to protect their peace. I will not teach her to call betrayal family just because a man benefits from the confusion." Vesper's face went white with fury. Theron whispered, "Mom, stop." She turned on him. "You let her do this to you." I almost laughed. Even now, Vesper blamed the nearest woman first. Theron looked at me. "I'm sorry," he said. Not loudly, not theatrically, maybe genuinely. It didn't open anything inside me. I nodded once. "I hope you become the kind of father Calliope deserves." His face tightened. He heard what I didn't say. "You aren't one yet." I turned and walked away. Fallon met me outside with a coffee I didn't ask for and a muffin I would probably forget to eat. "Congratulations," she said carefully. I looked back at the courthouse steps. The gray sky over Westchester County. People walking in and out with folders full of endings. I don't know if that's the word. Freedom, then. That fit better. We drove home in silence. Home. The word didn't taste like Theron anymore. It didn't taste like Maria's perfume or Vesper's judgment or the sound of boxes in the hallway. It tasted like new locks, fresh paint, sterilized bottles, my sister's laugh, Sloane's calm voice, Calliope's milky breath, and my mother's sweater framed by the window. At 5:00 p.m., I pulled into the driveway. The hydrangeas needed pruning. The porch needed sweeping. The welcome mat had been replaced with a plain braided one that said absolutely nothing. I liked it that way. Not all doors need to announce themselves. Inside, the colonial was quiet. Fallon carried the court folder into the kitchen. I walked upstairs with Calliope. The nursery door was open. Late afternoon had begun. A golden light filled the space, touching the crib, the clean dresser, the framed yellow sweater and the painted letters on the wall. Calliope, Alara Carter. I stood in the doorway and remembered the first time I came home and found the room stolen. The blue ballet flats in the foyer. The boxes. Maria's soft voice. Theron's hand on the crib. Vesper saying a baby wouldn't know the difference. Maybe Calliope would never remember that day. But I would. And because I remembered it, I would make different choices for her until she could make them for herself. I laid her in the crib. She stretched one small arm, frowned at the world, and settled back down. No audience. No arguments. No one standing behind me telling me to be reasonable while they took what was sacred. Just my daughter in her room. Her room. I sat in the new chair by the window. Not the old glider. This one was simple. Comfortable, chosen after everything that had happened. I leaned back and let the silence wrap around me. My phone buzzed. For a second, my body tensed. I checked the text. It was Theron. "I know today is final. I hope someday you believe me when I say I loved you." I stared at it. There were a lot of things I could have said. Love doesn't put a mistress in a baby's room. Love doesn't rip a daughter's name off a wall. Love doesn't forge signatures. Love doesn't threaten custody when it loses a house. But I had spent too much of my life explaining the meaning of love to a man who only used the word when accountability became inconvenient. So I typed only this: I hope someday you understand that love without respect isn't a home. I sent it. Then I blocked his number for everything except the court-ordered parenting app. The silence after that was immediate. Clean. Downstairs, Fallon called out. Alara, do you want dinner? In a minute, I answered. I looked at Calliope. Her eyelids fluttered. The moon lamp glowed softly. Outside, the sun was dipping toward the tree line of the houses across the street. At sunset, Theron and Maria had once stood outside my door with their cardboard boxes, stunned that I hadn't folded. Now at sunset, my daughter was sleeping inside in the room prepared for her. The difference wasn't the lock, it was me. I used to think keeping a family together meant holding every broken piece until your hands bled. Now I knew it didn't. Some doors don't close out of bitterness. They close because there is a little girl sleeping on the other side, and the peace was finally inside the house. I stayed in the chair until the room turned the blue of early evening. Then I stood up, walked to the nursery door, and tapped the frame once. Not to check if it was real. To thank myself for coming back. Downstairs, my sister was setting soup on the table. The quart folder rested next to a vase of grocery store daisies. My mother's old recipe box was open near the stove because Fallon had decided freedom required chicken noodle soup. I stood at the bottom of the stairs and listened. No yelling, no footsteps chasing me, no one telling me to make room for betrayal, just a house breathing around me. And, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a woman waiting to be chosen. I felt like the owner of my own life, and this time, the deed was in my name.